Welcome to a new podcast episode of Nina's Apothecary. I'm so glad we're reconnecting, whether you're seeing or hearing this. There was a brief so-called Christmas winter break, but I didn't take a vacation or holiday. Instead, I planned and went through our joint detox journey with you every day. That's why the first podcast is only coming out today. And I thought, since it's still not sunny and warm, and it will take a while longer, I'd tackle the topic of vitamin D, because I keep seeing significant deficiencies in almost all of us. And it's so important. So I asked myself, what is vitamin D anyway? Vitamin D sounds like it's just one vitamin, but it actually refers to a group of fat-soluble vitamins. We're probably only familiar with one or two, namely vitamin D3 and vitamin D2, the latter being the vegan option. But it's very important for our bodies and for many processes within them. So let's dive right in. Most will be familiar with its function. It's well known that it's very important for bones. Yes, that's true, because it plays a big role in calcium metabolism. This means we know that if we only have vitamin D and no or little calcium, it won't help us. That's the first thing that's really important. Bones and teeth are also closely related. What else is there? The immune system is also very important. It's very anti-inflammatory and has many important functions. I'll just mention the most important keywords that you probably all know already. This also includes physiological processes, and our muscles are completely dependent on vitamin D. What I often notice in the pharmacy or in online conversations with you is this myth, which actually isn't a myth. I'm always in the sun, or there's enough sun in the summer. I don't need vitamin D, true and not true. What's not true about that? Of course, it's true that our body can produce vitamin D itself through sun exposure on our skin, which is great, but there are some guidelines about when and how this works. It only works in the summer months when we have enough sun. And it only works in the chest or upper body area, and it only works around midday, between 11 and 2, or between 12 and 3, as they say. This means that we're probably a bit more restricted, even in the summer, especially if we're not on vacation, and on vacation, we're likely to be wearing sunscreen. And if we wear sunscreen and still lie in the sun, unfortunately, it won't help. Then our body can't produce vitamin D, because the UVB radiation is blocked, and then it doesn't work at all. Now we see that even in the summer, it's very important to take vitamin D. And of course, on the other hand, depending on your skin type, I recommend you, even in the winter, when there might not be direct sunlight, but just ordinary daylight, to really go outside during your lunch break, for example, and let some sunlight or daylight shine on any patch of skin. Even though there might not be significant vitamin D production, it's also very important for our psyche, mood, and sleep-wake cycle. That's the first way we can obtain vitamin D, through sun exposure under certain conditions. The second way is through diet. And of course, there are only a few foods that really contain vitamin D. These include fatty fish, eggs, and offal, such as liver, etc. Some dairy products are also fortified with vitamin D, which is usually stated on the packaging. So, we see there isn't a wide selection. For me, for example, everything is eliminated because I'm vegan. So, that leaves only the third option, supplements. And there's vitamin D3. There are very different versions, forms, combinations, and I want to give you a brief insight into what is smart, what is not so smart, and how much to take. As mentioned, individuality is always the most important. So, always discuss with your doctor, get a blood test, and then see how many units are important for you. Just as a guideline, I have a value of about 70. Most doctors will say that's a bit high or on the higher side. Based on all my training, I'm very convinced that the value should be between 70 and 100 ideally, and I take it so that the dose remains the same. So, to maintain the same vitamin D status as before, it's 2,000 units per day. And as I said at the beginning, it's fat soluble. So take it with food or a meal. Don't put it into boiling hot soup because that might destroy it. But while eating or shortly after finishing eating, whether in drops, capsules, lozenges, gummies, however you want, I'll explain the difference later. 2,000 units to maintain it, we know that now. So if I have a very low vitamin D level, I need to take a high dose to increase it. And I will discuss the best course of action with my doctor based on my current level. As I've briefly mentioned, there are different forms of administration. Liquid forms, or those that need to be made liquid, like powders to dissolve or drops, work best. Why? Because there's a 30% absorption through the oral mucosa. So if I swallow it, and it has to be broken down in the stomach by the acid, by the gastric acid, and then it's additionally absorbed in the intestine, I lose about 30%, as opposed to my good bacteria and saliva in the mouth doing something with it. Therefore, if it doesn't disgust you, I always recommend, for things that are not supposed to dissolve in the stomach, taking liquid forms or powders. If someone says they forget it, don't like it, finds it too oily, or whatever the reason, then please take capsules. Better than nothing, so definitely also an option. Lozenges are great too, because then we also have absorption through the mouth. What benefits do I get from vitamin D? As we've already heard, first, it's very important for the immune system. Why is that? It's a crucial component of antimicrobial peptides, which is great, and it's extremely important in the production and development of T cells, our defense cells, and macrophages. Macrophages are our scavenger cells, which can be thought of as consuming harmful bacteria and viruses. Naturally, having more of them means we have more guard soldiers watching over our immune system. Secondly, it's essential for our bone health, as I've briefly mentioned. If we have a lot of vitamin D, then calcium and phosphorus can be absorbed in the intestines. This is very important for our bones. You might be familiar with rickets in children, a severe disease often caused by a vitamin D deficiency, or osteoporosis in older people, where lack of exercise can exacerbate the condition. So, we need vitamin D for this reason as well. Thirdly, it's crucial for our muscles. Having a strong musculoskeletal system around our bone skeleton reduces the risk of falls in old age when a leg might suddenly give out due to lack of muscle strength. So, it's really important for muscles, not just for older individuals, but also for young people who are very active in sports. Where it plays another important role is in our mood and depression. The exact connection isn't fully understood yet, but there are some studies suggesting a link and a potential influence on our brain's neurotransmitters, which are crucial for sleep, mood, our day-night rhythm, etc. Also, for our cardiovascular health, there have been suggestions that it can lower blood pressure and positively affect coronary and cardiovascular diseases. And something many might see very positively, it has a beneficial impact on hormones, especially those that help us slim down, such as insulin. Insulin doesn't make us slim, but it has a positive effect on insulin and our metabolism. So, it's really important. But how do I recognize a vitamin D deficiency? In the simplest case, I go to the doctor, get a blood test, and then see my level. Symptoms usually manifest as tiredness, fatigue, weakened immune system, meaning if I'm often cold, sick, susceptible to diseases, I should check my vitamin D level, and mood swings, which could indicate a vitamin D deficiency. And if I often have muscle pain or just general body aches where I go for a half-hour walk and everything still hurts 3 days later, or I go up the stairs and feel every muscle, there are also some chronic diseases associated with vitamin D deficiency. One of them, which I've already mentioned, is osteoporosis. It's mostly a combination of factors, but often it's also due to a vitamin D deficiency. So, prevention is really the best approach. especially when it's so easy and inexpensive. Vitamin D is quite affordable, even if you don't get it prescribed, and it's easy to take. I always keep it in the kitchen, so I can't help but remember it while I'm preparing something to eat. Then, the second major group of chronic diseases are autoimmune diseases. The exact relationship isn't fully understood, but whenever it's about an autoimmune disease, vitamin D is definitely involved. Whether you have Hashimoto's or anything else, please ensure you maintain a high vitamin D level and regularly check it or take supplements. Chronic diseases like diabetes are often linked to a low vitamin D level. Furthermore, diabetes medications or insulins that need to be injected can deplete the body's vitamin D even more, creating a vicious cycle. So please always get a comprehensive blood test to see where you stand. As I've said, depression, cardiovascular diseases, and conditions like high blood pressure are also often connected to it. So, I can only advise you to ensure you have enough vitamin D. At the same time, spend plenty of time outdoors, in the fresh air, especially when there's sunlight. I know it's difficult right now. Again, ensure your diet is balanced. For example, mushrooms contain vitamin D2, especially when sun-enriched, which might be a bit hard to find but is definitely possible. We've heard it can prevent so many diseases that it's really worth it. If you have any questions, please, as always, write to me on Instagram, Anina Milenk, or on TikTok, Frau Apotheker. Or if you meet me somewhere in Rome, Graz, wherever, talk to me, write me an email through my website, karish.at, or from the contact form. I always enjoy engaging with you and would, of course, be thrilled to receive a cool review of my podcast. Thank you, and Karish yourself.